November meeting of your Transportation Advisory Committee. Glad to see all you. I always enjoy the few minutes before the meeting when we can kind of chat a bit, and sometimes it's the meeting is the only time I get to see some of you folks. So it was good to see you. Members, you know the ethics considerations. If you have an issue that will be coming before the committee today that you might have a financial stake in, or an immediate family member may have a financial benefit potentially, you'll need to excuse yourself from voting on that particular matter and identify that at this time for our committee. Does anybody have a potential conflict of interest? If not, Kelly, do we have anybody signed up for public comments?
Not that I can see right now, sir.
Okay, very good. Well, you have some folks that you want to introduce that are new to us today.
Yes, sir. So I will take this opportunity. Good afternoon, members of the TAC, to introduce, first of all, the new interim general manager for WISTA. That is Mr. Jerome Parker, who is here and will be helping us navigate sort of WISTA and manage our transit services for the city of Winston-Salem and its citizens. And then additionally, we have a new transportation finance manager to oversee specifically transit issues. And her name is Tia Ramsey, and she will be overseeing some grants and also contract management and just finance within DOT when it comes to transit.
Very good. Well, welcome, folks. Nice to have you as part of our group here. Members, you were able to see and have an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting in September. If there are no changes, revisions, we'll entertain a motion to accept those as presented.
I have one change.
Yes, sir. Mr. Combest.
No, this is Brent.
I'm sorry, Brent. Excuse me.
I was admitted as being present for the virtual meeting at the Salem Lake Marina.
Oh, and I guess you weren't. You were omitted from being present?
Yes.
Very good.
There.
Mayor Rocket, this is the minutes for the September meeting. I sent you a little email about that. I was looking back at our minutes for the July meeting, which is when we had the virtual meeting.
I'm sorry. My mistake.
Listed as present.
My mistake.
All righty. Any other revisions or corrections? Once again, we'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve. McIntosh.
I believe that Mr. McIntosh, and the second was
Clark.
Mr. Clark. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Call the roll.
Oh, we have to call the roll again. I don't like this.
I tell you what.
Okay, Kelly, you're on. Or is Hunter doing the roll for us?
I'm doing the roll.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Robert Clark.
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh.
Yes.
Mr. Brandon.
Yes.
Mr. Rocket.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Combest.
Aye.
Mr. Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Byram.
Yes.
Mr. Marion.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Willie Clark.
Present.
Is there anybody that I omitted?
Hey,
I'm
Kelly, Benita Finney, I'm on now.
And how do you vote, Miss Finney?
Yes.
All right.
John Larson votes yes.
Thank you.
Sounds unanimous to me. Kelly, let me quick question for you. Is there any reason, do we have the public or anyone joining this meeting other than committee members who we would need to have the agenda on the main screen as opposed to the members?
No, sir. That's at the discretion of the board.
Well, board members, if there's no objection, I would much rather look at your faces because you all have copies of the agendas in front of you. It's much easier to keep track of who's making motions and seconding them. There we are. Thank you. Appreciate that. All righty. Our next item for consideration is our MTIP for consideration for the 24 to 33 time period. And I believe, John, I believe you're going to be presenting that to us.
That's correct. Good afternoon, Chair Horn and TAC members. Item 3 is an action item of the FY24-2033 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program amendments and modifications to the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. The MTIP is a subset of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and reflects our planning areas projects that are programmed in the State Transportation Improvement Program. The projects included in the attached item in handout were presented to the NCDOT Board of Transportation in September. This item was subject to a 30-day public review between October 6th and November 9th, and no comments were received. Any questions for this item?
Questions for John, members? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move approved.
Approve. McIntosh.
All right, Mr. McIntosh makes the motion. Mr. Clark, was that you that made the second?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Robert Clark, very
Yes,
good. Any
sir.
discussion? All righty, Kelly, please call the roll.
Mr. Robert Clark voted yes. Mr. McIntosh voted yes. Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins,
Yes.
Mr. Swain, I'm sorry, he's not present. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Miss Finney,
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Very good. Thank you, members.
I'd like to say Larson should be in there still as alternate.
Okay.
Mhm.
And how do you vote, Mr. Larson?
I'm voting yes.
Very good. Thank you. Hunter, I believe you have the next action item for us today.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Horton. Good afternoon, everyone. The item before you is the consideration of the smoothed urbanized area boundary map and the metropolitan planning area boundary for the Winston-Salem urban area MPO. This item is going to ask you to do two things, so we will adopt two different resolutions and we'll need to hold two different roles. But the first resolution before you is 4A, and that's the adoption of the smoothed urban area boundary. You'll notice in looking at the map that what the census calls the Winston-Salem urbanized area is a jagged and non-contiguous shape running from King to the south of Lexington and from west to east from Bermuda Run to Kernersville. By smoothing this boundary, we are eliminating irregularities in the boundary and maintaining logical control points. The classification of urban and rural specifically matters for roads and their federal functional classification. So staff took care to draw a smoothed urban area boundary that accounted for the land that we expect to become urbanized over the coming decades to make sure that roads and other transportation facilities did not snake in and out of the urbanized area. This boundary is highly similar to the smoothed urbanized area boundaries adopted by the past TCCs and TACs in the years 2012 and 2013 following the 2010 census. This smoothed urban area boundary has been reviewed and okayed by staff at the North Carolina Department of Transportation's Transportation Planning Division and developed in cooperation with our neighboring MPOs, the High Point MPO and the Greensboro Urban Area MPO. Upon approval, this boundary will be submitted to NCDOT and FHWA for final review ahead of the end of the year deadline. The next resolution is 4B, and that's the adoption of the Metropolitan Area Boundary, or our MPO boundary. This item builds on the memoranda of agreement that the TAC agreed to in our previous meeting in September with the Greensboro and High Point Urban Area MPO, confirming that our MPO boundary will stay the same. This item recertifies the existing boundaries of the MPO, and meaning that all represented municipalities within the boundary currently will remain so. As with the smoothed urban area boundary, this boundary will be submitted to NCDOT and FHWA for their review. Happy to take any questions on this one.
Very good. Members, any questions for Hunter? All righty, we'll take the first one first, and that's the smoothing of the boundary. May we have a motion, please?
I'll move approval. Clark.
Second, Byram.
Mr. Clark makes the motion. Mr. Byron makes the second. Any discussion? All those in favor, Kelly will call your names.
Mr. Robert Clark voted yes. Mr. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh,
Aye.
Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byron voted yes. Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins,
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Very good. Thank you, members. We'll now take the second part of this particular item, which is 4B, and this is the adoption of the full MPA boundary. Entertain a motion, please.
Move approval, Clark.
Motion, Mike Brennan.
Once again, Mr. Clark makes the motion. Mr. Byron, was Mr. Brandon that made the second?
Correct.
Yes.
Very good. Any further discussion?
Wait,
Kelly?
question, please.
Yes, sir.
Is this the red boundary we're voting on now?
That's
This is-
correct.
Should be the full boundary, Robert.
And the smooth one is the yellow one.
The smooth boundary is, yes, the orangish yellow one. That's correct.
Yeah. It looks jagged to me too, but I'll take your word for it.
It is. It definitely is, but it does use some of the areas, streams, transmission lines, and
That's
roads
fine.
as the
That's fine.
logical.
I'll keep my motion to approve the red boundary.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Kelly, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Robert Clark voted yes. Mr. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh,
Aye.
Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brandon voted yes. Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byron,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins,
Yes.
Mr. Swaim has joined us.
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
and Mr. Clark.
Yes.
That concludes it. It's unanimous.
Very good. Folks keep dropping in. We may have the largest attendance we've ever had. So thank you all for being here. Righty, members, that concludes our action items for today, but we do have a number of items for information that we'll be considering at our January meeting. I believe, John, you have the first one, please.
Yes. Item 5 is an information item, is a resolution for letters of support for 3 transportation agencies: Davidson County Senior Services, Life Center of Davidson County, and Workshop of Davidson, that carry out 5310 services in rural areas outside of the Winston-Salem MPO. NCDOT's Public Transportation Division administers the annual application and selection process for Section 5310 in rural areas. The Section 5310 program provides funding to improve mobility for seniors as well as individuals with disabilities by removing barriers and expanding options for transportation services. The agency's reference provides services both within the metropolitan planning area as well as rural areas of Davidson County. Only services performed within the urbanized area of the MPO are eligible for MPO funding. Therefore, the 3 providers can apply for rural funding through the state pool. Funds will be used to provide essential trips to Davidson County facilities. If approved, the attached letters will be included in the agency's applications to NCDOT. And as mentioned before, this item will be an action item at the January TAC. Is there
Very
any
good. John, and this is something that we've dealt with on an annual basis prior
Correct.
to this. Okay.
Correct.
Any questions for John? All righty. John, you have the next one, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 6 is an information item. Again, it's the 2024-2033 MTIP amendments and modifications for the MPO. As stated earlier, the MTIP is a subset of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and reflects the planning areas projects that are programmed in the State Transportation Improvement Program. The projects included in the item in handout were presented to NCDOT's Board of Transportation in October and November's meetings. And this item will be subject to a 30-day public review prior to the January TAC meeting.
Very good. Any questions for John on this item? All righty. Thank you, John. Kelly, I believe you have the next two items.
That is correct. Good afternoon again, members of the TAC. The item before you is the review of the Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 grant program funding allocation for our MPO for fiscal year 2024, and of course plans to amend our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. The transit system located in the urbanized area is more than 200,000 in population are eligible for FTA Section 5307 funds for operating capital expenses. The Winston urban area received I guess for this current fiscal year, about $6.8 million again for fiscal year 23. MPO staff anticipates a similar amount for fiscal year 24 apportionment, and the fiscal year 24 FTA actually already began October 1st, and staff is bringing the item for information so that when the funding becomes available, there will be no delay in allocating the funding to the appropriate agencies. Currently, there are 3 transit agencies within our MPO that are eligible for this funding based upon data reported in the National Transit Database. Those agencies are Davidson County Transportation, Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, as well as the Winston-Salem Transit Authority. The number of eligible agencies may increase in future years, but at this time, these are the agencies that utilize that funding. Additionally, activities that are traditional eligible under the Job Access Reverse Commute Program, which provides job access for low-income populations, continue to be an eligible activity for these funds. Based upon policies that we adopted in 2017, funding will be distributed in accordance with the percentage developed by FTA. And each MPO staff, will coordinate a joint allocation meeting with all the eligible agencies to confirm that the funding identified can be used within those agencies. Staff will then make a recommendation to TAC for final approval, as well as recommend amendment of the MTIP when the time comes. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions for Kelly?
Mike Combest here.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any studies or analysis that shows the impact or lack of impact from previous distribution of these funds as far as elevating people out of low income situations, et cetera?
We don't have that specific study to that end. We do have information about sort of who uses the job access reverse commute programs. We have subrecipients that usually routinely apply for those funds specifically and routinely help low-income populations get to their job destinations. And we probably can also use transit data ridership to sort of help explain how much of the population we are actually helping with these funds.
What I think would be interesting is if we could see and show and demonstrate that, or how the application of these funds is materially impacting those populations, the low income. Are they rising in economic status? Is their status staying the same, not helping? So that we can see and I'm struggling for words here, so that we can see the benefit or lack of it, not just participation, but the consequence of that participation, or that service is a better word.
That's certainly a study that staff can look into to see if there is already some data out there about sort of how transit in general helps, and if there's any actual data that we can use to back up the fact that transit is a help to economic improvement for our population. I see Mr. Fansler has his hand up to answer maybe.
Thank you, Kelly. Mr. Chairman, may I add an additional comment?
Certainly.
So great point. Kelly's right. A lot of this data, one, exists, and two, I think it's partnering with our agencies to really and their GIS team to show some of this. I think with the different levels of reporting that we already get when we are processing the trips and invoices, accompanying that with the socioeconomic data that we can get through our MPO, there's probably an overlap there that can answer some of your questions. My internet may have dropped out there for a minute. I apologize, but I think there's some overlap there. I think it's really on us coordinating with other agencies and how to show that. So I think that can be done. It's just probably not done today.
I think that'd be very helpful to understand that, like I say, the impact, the consequence of how we're using these funds.
I mean, Michael, I think today we can certainly show ridership numbers, and that may be helpful to pinpoint where the ridership is coming from and trace that back to the areas where you're hoping to see economic improvement. And but I'm just trying to think. There's a lot of data that would have to be crushed together to be able to. You'd have to look at housing data, income data, public assistance data. There'd be a lot of data that would have to be crushed into a model, I think, to be able to. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but it sounds like it's a lot of data points to try to get that. And I appreciate what Mike is asking for, because we want to make sure that our dollars are working. Michael, would route information be helpful?
Well, obviously, I mean, participation is obviously a key, an indicator of distribution. But like I say, I think it would be useful if we could get some sort of insight as to the positive consequence or impact and how we're helping folks out. Not just participation, but like I say, impact or even lack thereof. That would help us steer the application of these funds in the future.
Jeff, this sounds like a consultant study, don't you think?
I think it has that component as well. I think it also starts with us seeing what we can and how to make some of our current GIS layers mesh, because I think there's a lot of this that we can produce with our agencies and the folks that use this, that maybe we can have a good baseline that we could then maybe present at a future meeting to then see if that's one where we are or what you like, or if we need to then go for further analysis. I think we can do it from that regard.
Well, we probably won't have the staffing resources or the time to produce this by the time this item comes to us in January. But maybe if we look at that in our program of work, that we can allocate staff over the course of this next year before this grant comes up again, to be able to see. And I understand Mr. Combast's point is that, are we spending money? Is it doing any good? And that kind of, Michael, I think that's really what you're shooting for, isn't it?
Much better said than the way I said it.
Chair, if I might make a suggestion, could we reach out to any other agencies to find out if there's a similar study on the shelf, at least as a quick proxy, so we can get a relatively quick answer on it? Not that it's going to be as in depth or as attuned to our local economic conditions, but just to just find a proxy if somebody's already done it. I'm sure somebody has studied it so far, just at least to get an initial read on it.
You most definitely can.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Just one other quick comment is it would seem like the relationship between employment opportunity and ridership would be an important thing to know. How many people are riding the bus to actually get to work would be an indicator of possibility of improvement of economic well-being.
Well, I think we'll also ask Scott Ryan to jump in, because I believe PART has some. Dan, don't you think PART has some data that we've been collecting? Has to do with ridership, unemployment, and jobs.
I would imagine it does. Scott could probably tell us off the top of his head.
So we'll reach out to him too. But your point's well taken, Jeff.
Have some data that talks about ridership improvements in terms of factory locations, and whether or not we want to put PART in those particular areas. So Scott does have some data. We did a study on that about 5 years ago.
Great. Very good. Jeff, it seems like you have some collection to do between maybe a top line that we can see in January, and then maybe if this committee warrants the allocation of staff resources to do a more in-depth study, then we'll see if that makes sense.
Well, you've got the A team that'll be on it.
Okay, that's great. Anything else for Kelly on this one? Thank you, Mr. Combis. That's a great question. All righty, Kelly, you have the next one, please.
Yes, sir. I'm pulling it up. Sorry. So again, the item before you is a review of the Federal Transit Administration 5339 Bus and Bus Facility Grant Program for the MPO for fiscal year 2024, and of course plans to amend our MTIP. FTA's Section 5339 program is a formula-based grant program to replace, rehabilitate, and purchase buses and bus facilities. The program provides available federal resources to eligible direct recipients that operate fixed route buses, bus service, or that allocate funding to fixed route bus operators. The program originated through the MAP Act and MAP 21, and it's changed from a discretionary to a formula-based program. The urban area received a little over $5,700, $571,000 for fiscal year 23 for the 5339 program, and we anticipate a similar allocation for fiscal year 24. And so to that effect, staff is bringing this item for information so that when the funding becomes available, we do not delay allocation of these funds. Staff will be bringing the item for action once the funding becomes available, and will recommend approval for an amendment to the MTIP as a result.
Very good. Thank you, Kelly. Any questions? All righty, Hunter, you have our last informational item, I believe, for today. And you're muted.
Sorry about that. I believe Kelly has one more with the UPWP. Is that correct?
I do.
Well, why didn't it show up on my agenda? So Kelly, rock and roll.
All right. My last item is item number 9. That's the review and amendment to our Unified Planning Work Program for the MPO. As most of us may know, we are designated as a transportation management area because we have a population of over 200,000, and we are required to develop a unified planning work program as a result. Each year, we do develop this UPWP in coordination with Federal Transit Administration, NCDOT, and FHWA. And the UPWP identifies planned studies and work tasks that will be completed during the fiscal year. At this time, the staff is recommending amending the UPWP by, we're essentially recommending moving funding from one task order to another to accommodate a project that we are moving from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24. That's the Northwest Boulevard project that is in the city of Winston-Salem, in order to have the accounting in the correct year of when the money will be actually spent. And then the other amendment that we're making is adding some funding to the MTP-CTP update study. We realize that the amounts that we have might not be enough, and we're trying to adjust our cost estimate in hopes of getting enough proposals in for this study that is required by FHWA and NCDOT. And the last amendment that's in there is really a change in the text. We added another project to be done under special studies, and that will be the creation of a database to help the MPO staff manage our projects and have a good, clear picture of where we are within. But by the time we apply for funding, whether it's for our SCBGDA funding or our CMAQ funding, and until the time of construction, so we can kind of have a good way of tracking our projects as we go, and sort of help holding each other accountable to where we are in the status of our projects. And the hope is that such a platform might be eventually public facing, so everybody will have the opportunity to see projects that are within their region and where they are in the process for their projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any questions for Kelly? All righty. I needed to turn over my paper to get that last item on the agenda. I thought we were done, so we'll just keep rolling forward. Hunter, now you're up.
Hi, Mayor Horn, and thanks. The item before you will be a review of the staff recommendation for future revisions for the Winston-Salem urban area MPO's federal funding call for projects process. And with this item, I have attached a memo that goes into detail about what were the different options that our MPO looked into after the TAC requested that we look into these different options, following Jason Schronz with the North Carolina Department of Transportation STIP units presentation at the last meeting in September. And Mayor Horn, with your permission, I would like to share a few slides on the screen to help visualize what the different options were that we looked at.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much. One moment, please. So I've put together a few slides on how we could potentially conduct future calls for projects for our Winston-Salem urban area MPO. To get everybody on the same page, at our September 2023 TAC, NCDOT's STIP unit proposed that our MPO move to a single combined call for projects that combines all of our direct attributable funding sources into a single call. And that looks like combining our Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG, our Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP, our Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, or CMAQ, and our Carbon Reduction Program, or CRP funding sources all together, and programming those out over a 5-year period. So if that were to be done immediately, that would look like programming out all of the allocations that we have for fiscal year 24 through fiscal year 28. Currently, our MPO holds 2 call for projects that programs on an annual basis. One is the CMAQ and CRP call. That one programs out annually and uses the most recently available fiscal year. The second call for projects we do every 2 years or biennially, and that is the Surface Transportation Block Grant and Transportation Alternatives Program combination call. And that one is on the horizon here in January 2024. If we were to change it to a combined call for projects, this would help NCDOT reach its goals of maximizing outcomes during the FHWA August redistribution period and have a number of other administrative benefits. So following that presentation, the TAC and TCC directed staff to provide pros and cons of a transition and help visualize what that would look like. We are recommending that we delay the implementation of this because this comes amid a time where calls for projects for our MPO are already actively ongoing. That being the CMAQ and CRP call for projects that was launched this fall in October, and then our Surface Transportation Block Grant call that will be kicked off in January. But we do endorse eventually getting to the position of combining our calls through a 5-year call for projects. But let's really quickly look at what business as usual would look like. This is how we conduct things currently. In 2023 at fall, we would have a $3.7 million call for projects for CMAQ and CRP like we just had. And then in 2024, we estimate that we have about $33 million to allocate for the call that would be occurring in January 2024. And we would continue to hold CMAQ on an annual basis, forecasting around $3 million available per year. You might notice that the numbers for STBG vary from year to year. That is simply due to the STIP units forecasting at this time, and we have an extraordinarily large amount available to us this year because of fund swaps that have occurred with the MPO. But generally speaking, what you see for 2026 would be pretty typical for your call amount, so somewhere between $15 and $20 million. So this is what we're currently doing. And there would be some pros for that. That would be predictability for applicants. This is the cycle that many of our municipalities are used to. They're used to seeing CMAQ come in the fall, and they're used to having STBG's bigger call come out on even years in January. It would provide some staff role stability because we have assigned folks at each of those particular calls for projects, and it would build some institutional knowledge there. Our cost estimate accuracy might be a little bit stronger because we're not plotting out as far as we would with a 5-year project window. And then timing wise, it would be beneficial for more shorthanded agencies who might be finishing up plans that they could then take an advantage of if a call for projects were held every year as it is now. That said, the downside to this is there's less funding flexibility if the projects fail or fall through. There's greater risk of lapse of those fundings. And what we've seen under this system is piecemeal project funding. A lot of the times we'll have a project that applies for funding for CMAQ 1 year and has to come back in subsequent years to get some of that gap funding because of cost overruns. Option B1 I'll go through really quickly, and this would be if we adopted NCDOT's proposal right away. Staff foresees a number of risks with this. The first being that we want to make sure that our municipalities have ample time to prepare for a call of this magnitude. As you can see, if we were to combine immediately, the call for projects pot of money available would be in the amount of $70 million. We definitely want to delay this so that people have time to get ready for a bigger call for projects down the road in 2026. But just for your information, this is what that would look like. And so it would basically be a rolling call where the first call in 2024 would be particularly large, and it would be for fiscal year 24 through fiscal year 28. And then every year after that, we'll still hold them biennially. We'll add the next 2 fiscal years that are available. So if there are unallocated amounts from this big call in 2024, we'll be able to allocate those again potentially in 2026, but most likely what we would be really adding on is the FY29 and FY30 amounts for all of our programs combined. There are some pros to this, which is this is STIP friendly and it reflects what the NC Department of Transportation would like us to do, at least in the STIP unit, and assists them with maximizing that funding benefit. Larger scale projects might be more feasible because more money is available. It may begin to nudge some of the municipalities, all of the municipalities, to think longer term about project lists and development. And it also follows the course of leading MPOs in our area. Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, Campo and Raleigh, French Broad River, and numerous other MPOs have moved to this single combined call for projects. That said, we believe that this would potentially give an outsized advantage to larger agencies who might have more capacity and longer project lists, and we believe that it provides an insufficient heads up for both staff to create good enough criteria to assess projects and for our municipalities to get ready. So what we're proposing to do instead is hold our call for projects under the current situation for 2024 in January, and we will have approximately $30 million call that combined surface transportation block grant and TAP right on schedule in January, and another one for $3 million in CMAQ in the fall, like we typically do. But what we'll propose in the summer is a new discretionary projects policy that gets us ready for this 5-year programming window, and that will enable us to move to a combination call for projects in fiscal year 2026. The policy that we present to you in summer 2024 will go into effect with the January 2026 call. We believe that this carries many of the benefits listed in B1 with the additional benefits that it gives our agencies time to prepare for a 2026 call under new criteria and process. A single call for projects would also be thoroughly vetted, and our TCC would have a chance to have their input and make sure that it really came out the best it could. I will not go on to option C because option B2 is the recommendation we wish to go forward with, but I'd like to make one last case and an example of why option B2 might be a good fit for our MPO. And this is a story. The story of Sammy Streetlight and Sally Sidewalk. For the first time ever, Sammy Streetlight has a chance to shine in the Metropolitan Planning Organization's carbon reduction program. Sammy applies for his chance to get funded in a competition the MPO calls the CMAQ and CRP Call for Projects. As a streetlight, Sammy knows that he can only be funded through the carbon reduction program, and he has some stiff competition with everything going for them. Down along the street, Sally Sidewalk lives a very different life. She can get funding through CMAQ, carbon reduction program, and if she doesn't get everything she needs from a call, she can also try her hand at the Surface Transportation Block Grant and Transportation Alternatives Call. Some projects just have all the luck. This year, Sammy Streetlight got stuck in a tough spot. His hopes ultimately dimmed as the rankings came out. Bailey Bus, Gary Greenway, and of course, Sally Sidewalk. Funds ran out in the CMAQ and CRP call before they called Sammy's name, and Sammy was highlighted in the unfunded pink section of the TAC item instead of the green, the most unfortunate place to be. He sat to himself wondering, what if Sally and Gary had waited for the bigger STBG or TAP call? They were awesome projects and surely would have done well in that pool too. Would he have had his chance at funding if they didn't apply? Sammy glowed indignantly at the thought that he wasn't good enough. After all, just like walkways, lighting is an FHWA proven safety countermeasure. It was a good project and he knew it. Deep down, he knew the other projects were simply trying to advance, and staff just implemented the criteria that they had in place. Still, he felt a bit resentful. This is the conclusion. What if the MPO set up a call for projects that saw Sammy for who he was? A bright piece of infrastructure recognized by researchers in the transportation safety world for reducing nighttime pedestrian crashes at intersections by 42%. If the MPO combined all direct attributable funding sources into a single call, there would be a bigger pool of money to compete for. More projects could be considered simultaneously, and projects could be paired with the funding source of best fit based on timeline and eligibility. As he pondered this, Sammy saw that the TAC agenda item for November, item number 10, with the note that staff will bring a revised call for projects policy back to the body by summer 2024. Sammy began to glimmer with the hope that 2026 could be his year to win funding. And Sally was happy too, because under this proposal, Sally Sidewalk may no longer need to cobble together funds between multiple calls. Hooray! So that brings us to the next steps. Staff will come back to you after reviewing the North Carolina MPO's locally administered projects programs across the state, including Raleigh's and Charlotte's. And we will develop and present a proposal to you for what this will really look like and how projects will be evaluated under this new set of criteria. Our TCC members, so staff from your regions, will be likely invited to help develop that new program, and the staff will work with our consultant on aligning efforts with the MPO project database that Kelly had mentioned. Happy to answer any questions on this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hunter. Your presentation was very illuminating. So thinking about this, I mean, this was a lot, members, and we really have to change how we think about project origination, project conceptualization, and project engineering and construction, and the life cycle that sometimes many small communities have, where they don't, they have opportunities come up that they don't recognize, and to only be able to think about those every 5 years could present a bit of a challenge. But I think this is a great presentation for us to work through. Please, please, please spend some time with your planners. See how, just take an example and see how it would apply to your particular community, maybe in an existing project that you've submitted, or a project you're considering to submit, because this is a substantial change. And I don't, members, do you have any other questions for Hunter? Because I think it was just a terrific presentation and allowing us to look at things a little differently.
Hunter, this is John Larson. In the case of a 5-year forecasting of your budget and your program of work, how do you handle cost overrides and changes to the budget that happen during that period?
That's a great question, and that's exactly something that we're going to have to figure out when we put forward the recommendation for the locally administered projects policy. One thing that I can say is that Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, that is doing a very similar program where they program 5 years out in advance. They have certain set inflationary numbers that they require for projects that are programmed out 4 or 5 years out, and they're required to build that contingency into the application that they submit. So we would likely handle it fairly similar to that.
Thank you.
Other questions, members? This one's a lot to think about. We'll talk about it again, I'm sure. Certainly, I'm sure, in January. Thank you, Hunter, to you and the staff for putting that together.
If I may, Mayor Horn.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to also add to the fact that we would still be having a call every 2 years. It would just be tacking on to the next 2 years. And so it will be sort of like a step, the way that the step is right now. And so we would still have opportunities every 2 years to either add funding to an existing project or program further out. It would just be continuing to build the next 2 years.
Thank you, Kelly. A lot of brain time. All righty. If there's no more questions for Hunter or Kelly, you have the staff reports. You know who's available to maybe speak to us. Does anybody wish a staff report to be presented right now?
Chair Horn, perhaps Pat, if he's available, Pat Ivy on the project status update.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to. The report is in your package and it is up to date. The only thing I'd like to make sure everybody is aware of is that this weekend, the contractor working on the 52 Beltway interchange will be providing that long promised connectivity back to University Parkway, and it should be completed either Saturday, late Saturday, or if we get a little bit of rain tomorrow, it'll be Sunday. But basically, we will have one lane in each direction from 52 to University Parkway, while the contractor continues to work on the interchange that should be completed probably late next summer or early fall. So this is a long time coming, so this will make a big, big difference.
Pat, can I ask you just, I've had several projects that I'd like to inquire about, but I'll limit it to one in respect for members' time. On page 6 of your report, fourth project from the bottom, EB 4020C, the Rushy Fork Greenway. It looks from meeting to meeting like there's been little or no change. It's reported as the city is working with the railroad on the easement. The last time that stayed in a circling pattern for an extended period of time, by the time there was an easement agreement, the project was required by the railroad to go back through an engineering review again.
Right.
Is it possible for you to make an inquiry into whether there's anything that be done to accelerate the conclusion of that?
I'll be happy to, and I'll report back to you directly.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Members, any other questions for Mr. Ivy? All righty. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
As a reminder, members, our next meeting, actually, let me ask first, do any members have any other items they wish to bring before the committee today? If not, our next meeting, January 18th, we'll skip, as we always do, the meeting in December. End of year, my thanks to staff for doing just a stellar job. Jeff, your first tenure period time, you've done a great job stepping in and I think moving us forward, and you haven't been shot by your staff members yet, so it appears that they're going to get along with you pretty well. Members, as always, I appreciate your time. We talk about a lot of important things and we allocate a lot of money, and I certainly respect and appreciate the time that you spent on those issues here. So if there's nothing else coming before the committee, my best holiday wishes to all of you. Spend some time with your family, hug your kids, hug your friends, hug your spouses, and we'll see you in January.
I know.
Thanks, folks.
Happy holidays.